If you have a young child who asks lots of questions, congratulations. The chances are you have a bright, thoughtful, sensitive little one who will endlessly amaze you as they grow. But my goodness, some of those questions are really, really challenging. I have been amazed by the thought process of my child and frequently thought, how did he think to ask that? Why did I never question this when I was young? Hi, I'm Ray and this is The Hardy Penguin. In the last video, which you can watch here, we looked at how to encourage questions. But in this video, we're looking at how we deal with subjects which might be more awkward. Quick caveat, we are not child development experts or psychologists. We're not professional educators, we're simply parents with lived experience at the messy end, sharing what's worked for us, and we hope it resonates. Let's jump in. Some children are just happy to take life on face value, and they really don't seem too concerned about the deeper questions of life, at least not yet. But others just seem to think more deeply. They consider, they take it all in, and they're keen to know. For these curious souls, they're not going to be fobbed off. Does your child seem to know when you're unhappy? Or do they get impacted by other children when they are hurt or told off or sad? You may have yourself an empath. I would encourage you to make sure you understand how these more sensitive children operate and figure out some ways to help them with a world which can be overwhelming to them. Let's look at 4 questions, and we're going to share some thoughts about how you might approach it if your child seems to be a deep thinker, an empath, or a highly sensitive child. Question number 1. What was that news story about, Mummy? Alright, in at the deep end. We don't tend to watch the news as a family. I go through phases where I don't even look at the news, which is kind of a self-preservation thing. And this ties directly into how I approach this kind of question. If you asked my son what are some of the things that Mummy always says, one of them would be, you can't unsee things. I use this a lot to help him really think about what he wants to watch, what he chooses to play, etc. I still have things I wish I'd never seen that scared me or upset me a lot as a child or even as an adult. But you can't unsee things. So the first part of this is about an important balance between exposing your child to real-world events and shielding them from unnecessary anxiety, fear, and distress. You know your child. The more you know your child and talk to them, listen to their questions and the reasons behind these questions, the more confident you will feel in helping them navigate things like upsetting news stories. Take it slowly. Try not to overexpose them. Having said all that, however, I'm going to share a story. When my child was 5 years old, the news headlines came on after we'd watched something else on TV. The lead story was about the murder of George Floyd. I remember fumbling to mute the TV, but it was too late, and my son had heard the story. Mummy, what was that story about? He asked. Now, before I go any further, I want to state very clearly that this moment was a turning point for me. I realised in the exact moment that I was trying to mute the story that I was exploiting white privilege in trying to hide this from my white son. We could just look away. So I checked that privilege and I turned to him and I said, well, in America, a police officer kneeled on the neck of a black man until he died. And my son's response was, but it was an accident, which he said like a statement, because in his world, police are good. No, love, it wasn't an accident. It was murder. You remember we talked about racism? And on the conversation went from there. This was at the height of the pandemic, of course, and due to being in home school, this led to conversations about the Atlantic slave trade, the city that we live in and its role in that. And it opened a whole conversation which probably we wouldn't have addressed at that age had it not been for that news story. Number 2. Is the tooth fairy real? Okay, this is an interesting one, and this is my own subjective opinion. Notice I'm choosing the tooth fairy and avoiding the obvious big red elephant in the room. You never know who's watching, and I'm not here to ruin anyone's childhood, but I did want to share an opinion on these types of things. This was our story. Mummy, is the tooth fairy real? I responded, what do you think? And he thought about it for a while and said, I think no, but I like to think yes. Well, I said, that seems like a really good answer. It's fun to play along with a magical idea, isn't it? He smiled, end of conversation. I don't ever remember believing in any of these things, but please believe me when I say it didn't make occasions any less magical. It didn't make me less interested in the make-believe. And my son is the same. In fact, I would argue the opposite is more likely to be true. I've heard friends talk about the moment they realised something wasn't real and how devastated and betrayed they felt, that they remember that moment and how weird they felt, and it felt like an undoing of something. If your child asks, my opinion is they probably already know, but if you persist in the fantasy being real, you become complicit. Think about why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. It isn't going to destroy their childhood to tell them the truth when they ask. They will still seek the magic. Question number 3. Will I get cancer? These kinds of questions often tend to happen at bedtime. That's what I find. If this is the case with you, you might want to watch our series on bedtimes and how to make them easier. A little boy at my son's school is currently recovering from leukemia, and he made a wonderful, empowering video which was shown to all the classes about his recovery and his journey. But my son came home that evening and was upset, and he was concerned that he would get cancer or that he would die. At the beginning of the pandemic, my son's hands were so raw from washing them so much, and he had heard older children at school talking about people dying of COVID, and he was convinced that he was going to die. Now, these are incredibly hard conversations, and it's important to stick to facts, preferably positive facts, and echo them. So, in the case of this little boy, we were able to deal with 4 facts. Fact number 1, this little boy didn't die. It's really sad that he had to be so poorly, but he is recovering, and that's brilliant. Fact number 2, yes, sometimes children do die of cancer, but it is extremely rare, and new cures are being found all the time. Lots of very clever people are working on cures every day. Fact number 3, everybody dies of something, but more people recover from cancer than die from it these days. I should add, in the UK. And most people who get cancer are much, much older. And fact number 4, if cancer is caught early, it is much easier to treat. You tell mummy and daddy whenever you're poorly, so if anything ever seemed suspicious, you'd be straight to the doctor. Question number 4. How was your day at work? From the incredibly hard to what seems utterly mundane, but hear me out. This is still an important question. Try and answer the question honestly. The more you respond with, oh, it was fine, or pretty boring really, the more your child is learning not to share. And also, if they are genuinely interested, this is an opportunity to deepen your relationship by sharing a bit more about your life that they don't see. It helps your child to see you as a full person, not just their parent. I'm not suggesting you bang on about your disastrous meeting with Bob from accounts or the traffic on the way home, but by finding something you can briefly share, you're honouring their interest, telling them a little more about you and about the world of work. Maybe you could make it a daily ritual to each share one good thing and one bad thing about your day. So these are 4 really different types of questions, but they're all types of questions where we have a choice as to how much truth we share with our child. From something they've heard in the media, something they've been thinking about in terms of fantasy and childhood norms, something they've heard about at school or nursery, or just something they want to know about your life. It's worth pausing to just consider how you respond, in these and any similar situations you find yourself in. Leave a note in the comments if you've any experiences to share about difficult questions from your child and how you dealt with it. No judgment here, we're all learning together. And if you have a child who loves to save up all their questions until the end of the day, you might enjoy this series of videos, all about how to create a calm and connected bedtime. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and consider sharing it with anyone you think might benefit. To see more from the Hardy Penguin, please do subscribe. It really helps us to build up our viewer base, helps more parents and caregivers to play with their little ones, get creative and get connected.